Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Atomo Diagnostics half-year results presentation. I'm John Kelly, the Managing Director and co-founder of Atomo, and I'm with Souter, our CFO.
Hi, everybody. Just bear with us while we share our screen here. Sorry, just having a few technical issues. John, maybe you want to just get started while
while we're getting that up and running, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the meeting. I think this half-year results talks to a company that's in transition as the company and the broader rapid test market transition away from COVID. By way of summary, we're obviously an Australian listed and headquartered business with global operations focused on the development and commercialization of unique, innovative, and we believe quite disruptive integrated test solutions that really add value in the home test and decentralized professional use testing markets. And our technologies are now increasingly being recognized as delivering that level of user benefit. And we're seeing a significant level of inbound interest in the platform, in part because we've received regulatory approvals and generated sales for these products, but more importantly, because I think now the market sees a much broader use of rapid testing post the COVID pandemic, and some of the larger players are now getting interested in the point of care space that previously they weren't to the same degree. And that's really, I think, the key message is that the diagnostic landscape has fundamentally changed globally post pandemic, with a greater focus on decentralized testing, a greater focus on the need for at-home testing, including telehealth supported delivery of healthcare. And that's where usability, reliability, and ease of use are fundamental to not only user satisfaction, but to securing regulatory approval and clinical acceptance. And that's where I think the Atomo technology has a very bright future. In terms of Atomo's investment case moving forward, we are, I believe, a market leader, increasingly recognized as a market leader when it comes to delivering these types of solutions. Our technology is being commercialized for HIV. We pivoted into antibody COVID testing with our platform. We have supported a number of customers such as Lumos and NG Biotech, successfully coming to market with their products that are now approved in a range of countries, including in Australia and in Europe. And we are now actively focused on bringing that technology to the US market in terms of both our own finished products, with the first priority product to come to the US market being a rapid early detection pregnancy test, but also supporting OEM customers coming to market on the platform as well. We've got a track record of delivering very user-friendly products to market, and that's now been expanded beyond blood into the swab area, and we have a swab device that functions very well that we're very excited about. We've proven that it can result in better line intensity, lower limits of detection, and while that wasn't and isn't a critical factor for a low-cost COVID test, it's certainly a factor that's really important in higher margin tests in areas like rapid molecular and microfluidics, and that's where we're focused on trying to find some partners. We've got a small team, but a really professional team. We certainly punch above our weight in terms of the types of solutions that we can deliver from the business, and those solutions are increasingly now validated and recognized globally as being of value. We're looking to take that recognition and turn it into long-term value add in relation to not only new products, but also new partners, and finding those partners and finding the right partners, I think, has been a large part of our focus. We've been in the US and Europe now regularly talking to a number of players, and we're very confident that those efforts will deliver significant growth to the business, both in terms of contracts and orders. And we expect those announcements to start imminently, and we're expecting to have a very strong second half of the year in terms of bringing new announcements to market that really show that we've turned the corner beyond COVID, and that the market more broadly is starting to now come back to what's after COVID, and what's after COVID is a new opportunity to really push into home testing, and that's where Atomo, for these companies, it can be a hugely valuable partner. To support that, we have got the manufacturing installed, validated and available, and that means that we don't have to continue to spend money on capex, and that's allowed us to minimize the cash burn for this half year. And also it means that we now have the ability to immediately supply our partners as and when they need product, and that installed capacity base both for platforms, blisters and finished HIV product, I think is going to underpin some growth over the next couple of quarters.
So just jumping into the results, 1.4 million in revenue for the period. Obviously, when you compare that with the prior period, the number's a lot lower, and I think that's because of the drop-off in COVID sales. We did about 4.5 million in sales in the first half last year, and only 1.4 in the current year. Excuse me. Sorry, John, can you?
Okay, going. Yeah, I think as Will said, the deceleration in COVID sales in Australia was more abrupt than the market expected, and that's obviously led to a slowdown in COVID business. But we'll see that we have had an underlying growth in sales when we exclude COVID, and I think that shows that the HIV business is continuing to grow. We're expecting to see a much increased level of sales as we move into the second half of the year and into financial year 24. We're also expecting to be able to deliver new products to market, pregnancy being the first one, and then hopefully a ferritin test to screen for iron deficiency, and that will allow us to continue to show that underlying growth in the business. We have some inventory that we provisioned. That was some COVID sales that were coming to their expiry date at the end of the year, and that reflects, I think, the fact that trading conditions for COVID products in the couple of months at the start of this financial year were very difficult. Demand dropped off very rapidly, and that was not just seen by Atomo, but I think a large number of companies that were in the COVID test business. I think for us, it's been a case of sorting that out on the finances. There was no cash loss this year. That stock was paid for last year, but we did want to obviously recognize it. Moving forward, we have seen an improvement in gross margins as we've moved off the sale of some of that COVID stock at a discount to get rid of some of it. We are also seeing increased levels of business from HIV outside of LMIC, so more business in Australia as we've reached into the pharmacy sector and signed up with API. And moving forward, imminently, we expect to see some sizable demand and sales coming into Europe, and that will continue to deliver improvements in gross margin because we have much better sales pricing in developed countries than we do in the LMIC global health business.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. The other point to note on this slide, I think, is that we have managed to keep our cost base lean. We have had a slight increase in employee costs, but that was offset against quite a sizable reduction in professional consulting expenses. So we brought a lot of that in-house. We took on more of that internally, and if you combine those two together, certainly the spend of the business in this half year is less than it was 12 months ago, and that reflects the fact that we're running a lean operation while we look for these partnerships to start to deliver revenue, and also for these new products such as pregnancy and ferritin to start to deliver sales growth into the business.
All right, sorry about that, everybody. And thanks for jumping in, John. So just onto the balance sheet, we finished the period with more than $10 million in hand, and I think the point that John's making is that we're being very careful with our cash flow and with our cash spend, and having a really tight focus on expenses, both in terms of capital, which is largely spent, and in terms of OPEX, and focusing the business on activities that relate to generating revenue and activities that relate to near-term product development opportunities. So that's the real focus of the business. And I think being careful about managing that cash flow, but continuing to invest in areas that are going to deliver value for the company. Obviously, the inventory obsolescence charge has had an impact on our inventory balance, but I guess just to reiterate the point that that's it's a non-cash item in the current year because we spent the money on those tests in the FY22 year. Other than that, the balance sheet's pretty consistent with prior periods, and obviously having no debt in the company is really important at this time in the market. So we just move on to the cash flow itself. We started the year with just under $13 million. We collected over 1.8 million in receipts from customers. So some of those were debtors that we brought into the year. Some of those were sales that we made in the early part of the first half. And in addition to that, we received about $1.2 million from the R&D rebate and a small amount from EMDG grant. And you can see there that we've been very cautious with our CapEx and our R&D CapEx, and very much focusing, the business spend on those value-added activities. So by doing that, we were able to limit our cash outflows for the period to around $2.8 million, which means we finished at 31 December with more than $10 million in hand going into the second half. Just moving on to the kind of broader market at the moment. As John described, we're really seeing this shift in attitude towards rapid testing, and we're also seeing companies that have been in the sector and have been focused on COVID now really looking to differentiate themselves and really looking to find market opportunities which require some sort of particular offering that separates them from their competitors. And that, I think, is where a company that's based around IP and based around patents and based around something that gives the users of the product something unique, that's where our opportunity really comes to the fore. Because during the COVID boom, the focus was on volume, the focus was on getting tests out. It didn't really matter how good those tests were in terms of their usability, and everyone could produce a test at relatively low cost and get them out in the market. Lots of companies have done really well doing that. Others that have got overcommitted to that are now really starting to struggle. But those that were successful and are now looking to take advantage of that position that they've built for themselves in the market are looking for new products to launch. They're looking for the opportunity to partner with the likes of Atomo to bring tests to market that customers will prefer over the alternative. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that now. Apologies if John spoke about some of this while I was coughing, but we're really seeing that now with some inquiries that are coming into the company. There's some independent and some external validation of that. McKinsey are talking about the size of the market opportunity generally for point of care as we move away from centralized lab testing. And then there's some other interesting data points. There was a study done by Ipsos in terms of where point of care and rapid testing is going. And that clearly highlighted the speed of results that rapid testing provides, the ease of obtaining rapid tests. You can get them in chemists, you can get them out in the field in Africa. And importantly, the ease of use are the top three key drivers of self-testing. So Atomo ticks all three of those boxes. And that's what we're really trying to emphasize in our engagement with the market at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, that the bits in box format were deemed acceptable because of the severity of the COVID pandemic, but they were generally approved under emergency authorizations. They're not an acceptable level of usability for general products. There's no rapid blood tests in OTC and clear wave markets, typically in high value markets like the US and Australia, and that's because the usability hasn't been deemed acceptable to either the consumers or the regulators. And I think the Atomo platform now has been shown to deliver that level of usability, as witnessed by Atomo being the only company that's been able to get a HIV self-test approved in Australia. And we're looking to do something similar with a partner in the US moving forward. And that is where now our technology adds value in a market that's bigger than it was. So how do we kind of look at that market from our perspective? There's essentially two business units within Atomo now. One is the provision to market of finished point of care tests. HIV was the initial flagship product. Then we had a COVID antibody test. We're looking to now commercialize a rapid early detection for pregnancy and a ferritin test that screens for iron deficiency. And then, there's others like vitamin D, thyroid, allergy, anemia, celiac. There's a very broad range of applications that exist, as well as infectious disease areas on blood, syphilis, and herpes, as well as with swabs, chlamydia and gonorrhea. So there's a very large opportunity now to move good quality tests into the market and get consumer approvals in countries where bits and box struggle. And we're seeing a lot of interest now from companies that are interested on the retail side to grow their channel with their COVID businesses having retracted, and in delivering a finished product that they can brand and take to market we get full capture of the value chain through to the finished product level, and that gives us the ability to look at licensing fees and exclusive arrangements, because nobody else is able to deliver that level of usability, and they're looking to compete on performance and market differentiation, and we're one of the few companies that deliver that. And that allows us to continue to push into retail. We're doing quite well in Australia with the launch of the HIV test. We'll use that channel to then launch the pregnancy test. To give you an idea of the size of that market, in the US, there's estimated to be about 30 million rapid pregnancy tests done each year. Blood testing is known to deliver results 2 to 5 days earlier than urine testing. For a large portion of women that are screening for pregnancy, that extra couple of days is important. How big the blood testing share of that 30 million market has to be determined, because no product's been able to get approval to go into that market for blood home testing, but we believe our device gives us every opportunity to do that, and we think that market segment is exceptionally large. Likewise, with things like ferritin, we know that those markets are growing. The companies we're talking to in the US and in Europe are already trying to launch ferritin tests, primarily at home collection for lab-based results. But if you can deliver a test that's cheaper and gives an immediate result in the home, that's preferred by the service providers. So we're getting very good levels of interest, and we expect to be able to announce further deals in the coming weeks and months. On the other side of the business, outside of our finished products, we have what we're calling a point of care technology business, and that's really the commercialization of sub-assemblies and componentry that relate to our proprietary know-how, our functionality that's unique, and that's proprietary know-how that we can sell to other companies so that they can deliver improved usability, improved user satisfaction, improved clinical performance and regulatory approvals, but where Atomo's not going to the trouble and cost and effort of launching its own products. So that's allowing us to supply sub-assemblies and blister componentry and other swab type device componentry to companies that value the technology, and that allows us to scale the business outside. And we're seeing a lot of inbound interest, particularly outside of lateral flow. Molecular point of care and microfluidic applications are high value, high growth applications, particularly in the US post-pandemic, and that's where our precision and usability really add value. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us. That's a slightly slower burn, because those partners have to get their products approved and on the market rather than us selling a finished product immediately. But I do think that part of the business will continue to underpin growth for us, and we're very excited about that, because it's low cost supply, because we're essentially selling them off the production line products. So they're 2 years of the business, and what we're trying to do, particularly with the finished products business, is find channel partners that can generate volume for us. We have developed the world's best solutions. We have proven that we can get regulatory approval. We've proven that we can generate sales. But really, to get to a level of scale and sustainability and profitability, we need to sell more. I don't think anyone's of any opinion other than we need to sell more there. And I think we've come to the conclusion that growing an infrastructure in sales is not our core capability. So it's really about plugging the gap between the finished products and the revenue, and that's by finding a number of channel partners that can deliver market access, because that's not the business that we're in, and that's not the business that we want to invest in. It's not our core capability. So the good news is that there's a lot of companies that have come out of COVID where they focus on point of care testing. They're cashed up, they're looking for products. They're increasingly recognizing our version of a product as superior, and we're very confident that we can plug that remaining column with market access relationships that then get us into high growth sales contracts, and that's the plan. And what's underpinning that? Well, it's quite simply best in class usability. We had an independent study done here in Australia where the Atomo Pascal device was compared to a leading CE marked multi-component blood test kit that sold widely in Europe, and the performance of Pascal, as we'd hoped and suspected, was overwhelmingly convincing as an improved solution. More than 90% of users found it much easier to use. We reduced blood delivery errors down by more than 90%. We completely removed all buffer delivery errors, and we had much better compliance with with the outcome of delivering blood and reagent to the test accurately, and that then delivers the usability that our products are now starting to be recognized for. This is a hugely important piece of data because we've been able to go to the US market in particular and say, look, those bits in box products are not getting FDA approval because of usability challenges. That's well known. Here's a solution that's now independently verified to be able to cross that threshold with usability that does meet the needs of users and regulators. And I think that's a very compelling offer to the market now, a market that's very excited about the opportunities for home testing if they could just find a platform that delivered the regulatory approval, and getting that regulatory approval is now our number one focus. Because that opens up that whole US market for us, not just for our own products, but for OEM contracts as well. To support that, the business has, as Will mentioned, essentially completed its CapEx investment. That blister machine generation 2 has now been qualified in Sydney and is operational. We can make millions of blisters. We've got validated cassette capacity ready to go. We've got products coming to market now, and we've got a small team, but a team that's very focused on making this happen. And that gives our customers and partners confidence that they're plugging into a validated infrastructure that's low risk, that's ready to go, that's low cost. And I think we're finding that's a very compelling offer to the market now. So in terms of key priorities, we're going to split the key priorities into essentially these two business units that we're now talking about. With regard to rapid tests, obviously we're seeing growth in the HIV business. We're very confident that that growth is while not exponential, is very significant over the next 3 years. We're expecting to have a much stronger second half of the year and some announcements to underpin that. We are looking to launch our professional use version in Europe through some new distribution partnerships. We are looking to expand and continue to expand the Australian sales. Our volumes in the last 12 months have gone up by a margin that's very encouraging, and that's without public funded support. We have noticed and recognized and welcomed the fact that the US and UK governments are now moving into public funding of self-testing, and we're looking to actively engage with the Australian government directly and through our community partners to make sure that Australia is not a laggard in that regard. And we think there's a lot of opportunity to announce some public based programs that really show the value of self-testing outside of facilities. And we're also confident being able to secure some traction with US market entry partners later this year as well. So that HIV business we're very bullish about. We think the revenues quarter on quarter will grow quite materially. In addition to that, we're confident of bringing out a leading pregnancy test that delivers results earlier than the best urine tests available, and that's a very attractive part of the market to be in. It allows us to maintain a premium and really differentiate the solution from the 10 other urine tests on the shelves in Tesco's or Walgreens. And I think there's already been some very encouraging feedback from partners both in Australia as well as in the UK and the US around demand for that pregnancy test. We're looking to prioritize getting the regulatory submission into the Australian market imminently, and we're also looking to move forward with engagement with FDA on the US pathway. So that's taken up a lot of our focus, but will underpin, we think, very significant growth over the next 2 to 5 years as that product gets delivered to market by customers, through partners that are proven to have access to large scale retail channels across the globe, and continuing to make sure that we're bringing products to market that the market want. We've had a lot of demand for a ferritin test. We're looking to commercialize that later this year. And with those channel partners, we're now starting to really understand what products they want for their customers. And that allows us to really focus on products that we know have demand and partners lined up waiting for. If we then move on to those products specifically, the pregnancy test, we're hugely excited about it. It's already been launched by NG in Europe on our platform. So we announced some sizable volume orders from them for the cassette. We will then continue to add volume to that channel by ordering for our own markets, initially Australia and New Zealand, then hopefully into North America as we get approvals there. That could be a very significant product for us. As I said, in the US alone, that market's 30 million tests a year, and there's no test that's approved in the OTC category for blood, which gives us a unique marketing position, the one that some of the larger retail people have validated as being of value to us. Again, there's a lot of emerging applications, ferritin, celiac, thyroid. We're very excited about the opportunities that the platform brings to the market, and some of the partners we're talking to are very excited about that pipeline. Then when we look at the OEM technology business, the point of care technology business, I've just come back from a conference where we had significant levels of demand for our blister component as a standalone offering. We've integrated a blister device into our lateral flow platform to simplify ease of use, but the main use of blisters in point of care testing is actually in higher margin, higher value, rapid molecular and microfluidic cassettes that are used for multiplexing of various tests. And without getting into too much detail, our blisters deliver levels of functionality that other blisters do not, and we're having a lot of interest from that. We're now looking at what's involved for us to deliver a specific standalone blister delivery business. There's only 2 companies in the world that are making blisters at scale and selling them. They're doing very well at that, and their blisters, we don't believe, are as good as ours. So there's a very sizable opportunity in the supply of blisters to the market, and we're looking at that as a medium-term area for growth now that we have the blister design, the IP, and the machine already there. Outside of blisters, we're very excited about the re-engagement of OEM partners for our blood cassettes. We are in process of discussing with a number of partners a sales and promotion strategy that will see our platforms being offered more broadly to the market by companies that are involved in the development of new assays. It's much easier to get a new assay onto our platform and commercialize than it is to try and get somebody with an existing product to go back and retrospectively revalidate. So getting access into those new development channels is critical to growing that longer term opportunity, and we're well advanced with a number of partners in executing some deals to do that. We'll bring news of that to market as they get completed, but I think that's a long-term opportunity to re-energize that blood-based business, and we've already, as I mentioned, got that validated capacity now ready to go. And then outside of blisters, we've got the swab device that we developed on the back end of the COVID pandemic, but that device was really developed for all swab applications. We're looking at 2 particular applications to possibly in-house and develop with partners, and we have a partner lined up for both STI screening for chlamydia and gonorrhea using our swab device, as well as multi-panel respiratory testing, and that can be both lateral flow or potentially microfluidic. The swab device supports both equally. The early testing work we've done shows it's very user-friendly. People like using it. It's simple. It reduces complexity of messing around with some of the bits and box formats associated with swab testing. But more importantly, as you can see from the photographs, it delivers an improvement in line intensity, better limits of detection, better ability to detect low levels of reagent, and that's valuable to companies that are trying to look at multi-panel testing where performance is key to acceptability and approval. And also our device delivers a controlled volume of input in a way that a dropper bottle does not. And while that's not particularly important for a lateral flow test, you need enough to run the test. But for anything where you're quantifying the result, the input volumes are material to the accuracy, and our system is much more precise. So we're seeing a lot of interest there. So again, that's a new solution that's coming to market that we think offers both parts of our business opportunity, finished products in our finished products business, as well as sale of devices to other companies in the OEM business. And that's the end of the presentation. Happy to move to questions.
Okay, let's just jump over to the Q&A. Okay, so we've got a question in relation to filing for FDA approval for the rapid pregnancy test in the US market.
Yeah, great question. So we don't have a specific date at the moment that we're going to share. We have had engagements with some specialist partners in the US to help with that process. We do anticipate reaching out to FDA for a pre-ID meeting to agree a regulatory plan so we can complete that. That's hopefully in the next month or 2, and then from that we'll be able to then come back to market and say this is now the regulatory plan and the anticipated approval dates. But certainly getting that done as soon as possible is our #1 priority.
We also had some questions about the costs and the run rate of the business. I think they're fair questions at this point in the cycle as we move through into the second half of the year. I think John may have made the point while I was outside coughing, but I think just to emphasise that we've really been able to rationalise some of our expenses, particularly related to external consulting costs. Some of those were needed when we were incurring them. We've got a lot of that work done, and we've been able to strategically insource the key people we need to support our own activities, and that's enabled us to reduce the costs. So in terms of our people costs, which are obviously our most significant costs as a knowledge business, we've been able to reduce them by around $600,000 to $700,000 over that first half period, and we're going to continue with that cost discipline in the second half. And that then leads us back to the revenue side of the equation to build on the early successes we've had in the new calendar year, grow the revenue, and then that'll put us in a good position by 30 June to go into the new year with positive momentum, but maintaining that cost discipline. Just see if there's any other questions. Not at this stage. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to post them into the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen.
In the absence of those, I'll just close out by saying that we always knew this transition post-COVID was going to be difficult, not just for Atomo but for the diagnostics market more broadly. COVID for us was a double-edged sword. We did manage to make sales of our platform for blood testing initially, and then sell one of our partners' products here in the antigen space. And that allowed us to generate revenue growth last year, but it came at the expense of a lot of our pipeline opportunities in blood disappearing as all of our potential partners around the world all focused on COVID. It's really only since probably April through to August that those companies have started to think about moving on from COVID, because they were all drinking from the fire hose for the last 2 years, and COVID was everything. We're now seeing very, very significant inbound inquiries. The reality is that takes some time to translate through to contracts and revenue. We've been very mindful of the cash burn through that transition period. Getting our own products to market for pregnancy and ferret will allow us to directly generate sales to help weather that gap. And now having partners identifying home testing as much more valuable gives us a ready-made channel partner arrangement with people that have got infrastructure and capital from the COVID experience of selling tests in the millions, but now very hungry for new products that they can continue to grow, and recognizing that our solutions are special. They're better than the bits and box formats that they've been able to source on market, and there's a lot of interest, and we're very excited about the new products that we're bringing to market, and we're very excited about the opportunities for OEM partnerships. But finding those partners is critical for us. We are not able to grow a 800-person sales business around the world, so finding those partners is fundamental to our success, because we have the technology, we've proven that, we have the production capacity ready to go, we have the approvals, we have the usability validated, we have everything except sales, and now partners give us that sales access that's fundamental, and we recognize that, and we expect to be able to show the market that those partners are real, they're there, they're committed, and we'll see revenue off the back of that. Okay, we've had a couple more questions come in, John, while you're talking. I think perhaps this one relates to what you were just describing. So the question is about our distribution network and whether we're happy that will support target markets to drive revenue. I think, to reiterate John's point, and maybe you want to add, but I think because of the distraction of COVID, a number of our distribution partners were focused elsewhere. So obviously NG Biotech in Europe was selling a pregnancy test on our Pascal device. They then quickly pivoted to their own COVID test. They sold substantial numbers of COVID tests into the European market and were very much focused on that. They're a relatively small company, so they committed a lot of their resources to that. They're now coming back to pregnancy, and so we're confident that in that market they're very strong. But what we've done is say, okay, in other markets where you haven't been able to dedicate additional resources, we will help you do that, and that's why we've announced the deal for pregnancy, where we will take the product into the Australian, New Zealand, potentially Singapore market, and in conjunction with NG into the US market. So that's an example of where we've been able to restructure distribution agreements. We're looking at all of our agreements across HIV and in discussions with new parties about potential new tests to make sure those distribution arrangements work for both sides, and that we have sufficient input to
really make sure that our partners are driving sales. And I think that's going to be critical to that revenue growth story as we move forward.
Yeah, I just add in terms of that, the importance of that distribution network. We brought on a professional in the UK whose background is growing and managing distribution networks, and she's already brought some real benefits to the business, and we'll be looking to announce some new partnerships moving forward that we think are strategic in nature rather than opportunistic. And I think finding partners that want to launch a range of products on our platform is preferred to, you know, traders buying product because they want to make a quick sale, which is really the dynamic during the COVID years. So I think that's important. We've also got Jim in the US who's starting to reach out to the, you know, the recognized national distributors in point of care, as well as well-known brands in sort of retail space, and the reception to the platform has been really good because we can really demonstrate improved user outcomes, much better user preference for our solutions over the incumbents. And, you know, that's you know, very, very important for retail agents to know that their product is differentiated and preferred, because that's what drives repeat business. So yeah, we know the distribution network's important. We're putting in, we think, the right people to get the right partners in place, and the partners we're talking to are very encouraging and committed, and we think there's some very good deals to be done.
Okay, John, maybe there's a couple of questions here that are around the same theme. I'll just deal with this one quickly. There's a question about Bondi Partners, whether we're working with them in the US. That's one of the costs that one of the external consultants that we're no longer using, because we worked with them to get ourselves established in the US. We hired Jim during that period to take the lead in the US market, and we've insourced that now. So that's been done. There's quite a lot of questions about the pregnancy test itself and the timing around taking that to the FDA. So maybe, John, you could just describe a little bit about that process with the FDA and how, you know, how we're working with NG to put a plan together for regulatory approval.
Yeah, so NG is the listed manufacturer of that product, and they currently sell it in Europe at CE Mark. We've got the exclusive rights to brand an Atomo version for markets where we're able to sell it, and that's essentially ANZ and North America. In ANZ, we'll likely go to market ourselves under our own brand, because we already have that brand recognition in pharmacies with the Atomo HIV self-test. In the US, it's more realistic to think that we'll do a white label deal with a recognized retail brand or national professional use distributor who've got recognized brand cachet and access. So that'll probably be a third-party brand, but we'll be the exclusive distributor. In terms of the pregnancy test itself, HCG levels in women build up earlier in blood than they do in urine, which means that blood tests typically detect a period of time earlier than urine tests. That's the premise of blood. And that's why if you go to a GP and he needs to do a rapid test, he'll typically not use a urine test, he'll use blood. How much earlier that is varies by women. There are studies that show that that's not a fixed period for every woman. There's a distribution, as there are with most things in life, and the data that we've got suggests 2 to 6 days is the band. There's a large study that NG are doing in France to really quantify that across, I understand, about 250 women in an IVF program. Once that results out in the next couple of months, we'll have much more definitive data on the claims that we can make for that product, particularly in the US market, because those claims will be really important for how that product's positioned by the large retail groups relative to the other 8 or 9 urine tests on their shelves. So it's a number of days earlier, up to a week, probably at least 3 or 4 days, but we have to wait and see what those claims are going to be. But certainly we expect to be the earliest detection in the market, which is, I think, the main claim that we think will drive business.
Yeah, and I think the feedback from the potential distribution partners has been encouraging, that that's really important to people, both in terms of clinicians at point of care and also to individuals, on the assumption that you can get an OTC approval. There are obviously pockets of people that want to know, particularly in areas like IVF, as soon as possible. They want their results, so it is seen as a significant differentiator.
Yeah, I think the other benefit for us in prioritizing pregnancy in the US market, beyond the sales of pregnancy tests themselves, are that pregnancy is a well-recognized over-the-counter category. which means that it's a more known application to go for our first home use approval in the US. And once that's done, then the platform, the Pascal platform, is approved not only for pregnancy, but that the platform then can be used as a predicate for other 510K applications, which allow us then to offer not just our channel partners other products, but also the OEM market, a device that's already got a 510K and a clear waiver and OTC approval that they can then use for their downstream assay application. So I think that's a hugely important deliverable for us. It not only generates, we believe, significant sales, but it also validates that platform for other US customers.
That's a good segue, John, into, there's some questions about the different platforms and the different go-to-market branding. So the questions, I think people just trying to understand better where we use Galileo and where we use Pascal and why we do that. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Galileo was the original device, and it had integrated lancing and blood collection, but not the buffer delivery, and that's because buffer was still being developed and validated. That's a lower cost platform, and that's the platform we use for HIV self-testing, and we made that decision because that was the minimum viable product to get to market, and also because cost was critical for global health LMIC markets. We know that the integrated buffer version that is Pascal is preferred by users and the market because it's fully integrated. It has that automatic button delivery of buffer, which is, really reliable, really accurate, and really preferred. So that's really the platform that we're offering OEM customers and new products to market. So the pregnancy test is on that. Lumos's FebriDx test is on that. We'll be looking to expand that in other applications and also offer that to our OEM customers, because that really is the differentiating platform that really makes the bits and box look agricultural. So that's the one everyone's interested in. That's the one that we think adds the most long-term value. But in the more cost-sensitive global health market, we'll stick with Galileo. And also we have 15 million units of Galileo production validated and ready to go, and we want to utilize that. So we'll continue to supply global health with the Galileo version.
And then just in terms of branding, I can address that one. So primarily in Australia, we're targeting building the Atomo brand. So the HIV self-test that you'll see in a box in pharmacies is the Atomo branded product. We will be bringing the pregnancy test to the market as an Atomo branded product here. In international markets, it depends. So in different markets, we can provide our products to our customers, white label in their branding. So it really depends on what the customers are looking for, what volume commitments those customers are prepared to make, and what the distribution arrangements are. But certainly in the Australian market, we're targeting building out that brand recognition for Atomo on the finished products side. There's been some discussions with some parties about co-branding so that we can get recognition for the IP around the device itself, and that's another way of growing the Atomo brand itself. But essentially, given our go-to-market strategy involves downstream distribution and downstream partner arrangements, that does require sharing branding with those partners.
Yeah. So that's all the questions we received. I'd like to thank everyone for their questions. I'd also like to thank everyone for their continued support of the business and for their patience. I appreciate that the last 6 months trading conditions have been difficult. I think that transition out of COVID was always going to be a challenge. What I will say is that the reception we've had and the progress we've made in the contracts and orders that we expect to be able to announce in the coming weeks and months will, we believe, validate what we've been saying even before the pandemic. And that is that to be successful in decentralized testing, you need to deliver solutions that are reliable, that consumers want to use, that regulators are comfortable with. And in the blood testing category, we're still the only company that has done that successfully. And now with a renewed level of interest in home testing that didn't exist before the pandemic, we're getting much better partner engagement. And I think those partner relationships will be the key to success, because we've got everything except access to customers, and these customers are now, we believe, being accessed through these partnerships. So I think it's a really good strategic relationship for us, and one that we hope to be able to announce across a range of agreements in the coming months that validate that, and hopefully give our investors confidence that the growth will be significant and be material, and that we have moved towards a place where our solutions are becoming gold standard in the market. And I think that's where we want to be. So yeah, I would like to thank everyone for the time.
Thanks very much. Bye now.
Thank you.